My guest is Sahar Gharachorlou, author, spiritual life coach, and motivational speaker with a master's degree in psychology. She remembers 877 past lives, which we're going to talk about and more. Sahar, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, we're happy to have you, Sahar. And if you don't mind, can we start with your background? Because before all this, you were in the corporate world and somehow you had some life events and then you started down the spiritual journey.
Yeah, I actually didn't really start it. I was kind of pushed into it. But yeah, so I had a bad, really bad, nasty marriage. And I was trying to find answers because I so wanted to keep it. And I didn't know where and how did I go so wrong to deserve what I was getting. And a friend from college suggested that why don't you try past lives, because I know you for the last 10, 12 years and I know probably you wouldn't have done anything as such in this life. So maybe the answer is in the past life. And then coming from Iran, we don't believe really in past lives, right? The majority of the community is Muslims and they believe basically in heaven and hell. Even though I had my doubts about it, now I understand the concept of heaven and hell in a very different way. But then I thought, okay, if I cannot find the answer anywhere I'm looking and I'm going crazy and dealing with this situation, I rather give it a try. And if nothing else, it was very fascinating, the whole thinking of knowing what you have done in the past life. So this is how this journey started. I was still in corporate, and then there was no looking back. Within few months, I had already seen 19 past lives, and I kept on going for answers and truth and you know just digging deeper and deeper to find out, okay, now I knew what happened in the past. Now I wanted to know who am I. So that is how the whole thing started.
So, did you go through hypnotherapy?
No, not hypnosis. So now I'm a trained past life regressionist, where I also train other therapists, and even I don't use much of hypnosis. There is another technique, one of the so many techniques to get into the subconscious mind, and that is called progressive relaxation.
Hmm.
So if a person's mental faculties are developed enough, you don't need to go through hypnosis. You can actually go through progressive relaxation.
What value do you get from visiting your past lives? Can you give us some examples of like you visited a past life and then you discovered some aha moment, and due to that, your life changed in what way?
So I would talk about a past life where I was an author. I was actually a white man from Britain, and I was uh, at that moment when I saw the past life, when the past life started. So as you understand that either you see or you have a sense of knowing or you hear, right? It's not necessary it happens like a movie, and you can enter the past life at any moment in that lifetime, right? It is not that you see the whole life minute by minute. You just go to the most significant events. So this is a life where I saw myself. So when the past lives opened for me, I was getting beheaded. If someone with a guillotine and my head was there and I was getting beheaded, and then I asked, I mean, at that time I was working with a therapist, and then I wanted to know what happened. Like, why am I getting beheaded? So apparently, I wrote a book which talked about certain truths which were not allowed as per religion in that country. And I believe I was in India or a similar country. It can be Pakistan or India, but I couldn't really identify because the message was so much more important than these details. So because of that, I was caught and then I was punished, and then it was a death sentence. Then I was killed. So that actually opened my block towards writing. I was given a message through a client when she was in past life regression, and I was actually the facilitator for her as a therapist. And she said, "You're supposed to keep writing. You have to write something. You have to bring some clarity to people, and that would be through your writing." And of course, I didn't have the confidence. But being a therapist, I thought, let me use my own technique that I use for others. And then asked a friend to help me, a colleague to help me. And then I saw this life. And then what happened after that is, even though not immediately, but I wrote my first book. So I think that was one life where it really removed the block of writing for me.
When you are going through your past lives, can you do it to yourself, or do you have to have one of your colleagues regress you and guide you
No,
through it?
no, not anymore. In the beginning, yes, but not now.
Is that something that we can learn to do ourselves?
Yes, you can, but you do need practice. And the reason, and initially it is suggested to work with a friend or colleague. Like when I train past life regression therapists, I ask them that for the first 1 year or 2 years, they should work under supervision. And especially if they want to see their own past life, there should be someone to hold their space and push them. Because what happens is, no matter how much of awakening has happened and no matter how much we have discovered who we are and we are in acceptance, there are levels of judgment and there are layers to our consciousness, and also there are painful events. And it is possible that when we enter a past life, either due to judgment or due to intensity of the pain, we are not ready to go to that moment of truth. And healing happens in the space of truth. So what happens is we open a past life, we see certain details, and we feel, oh, this is all, and we come out. But when you work with someone who's, especially if that person is senior or really knows how to do the therapy, then they can actually push you and to help you see and go through that pain and come out on the other side with clarity and probably bring the gifts or release whatever needs to be released. So in the initial stage, really, I don't suggest people should do that. It won't be very helpful. It will open too many wounds for people, which they won't even know from where these problems are coming, you know.
Mhm.
But once you're, I think, established in your knowing and you're confident that you will not bypass the truth, then yes, then you can do it on your own as well. Then you don't need assistance as such.
Do you find that when you're regressing somebody, that they get to points of their past life that are too painful or too fearful for them to approach or view, and that's why you have to push them?
Yeah, it's often, more often than we think, that the pain is so unbearable at the time it happens. So when they enter a past life, they feel it with the same intensity almost. So when that happens, then there are techniques we use to make sure that they watch or go through the pain without really feeling the pain. Sometimes the pain is also physical. Like I remember this is also again very initial stage of my learning, and again, I was sitting with a colleague of mine, and I used to feel extremely cold. And we were just sitting and chit chatting, and we were talking about cold weather. She also used to feel very cold, and how it is unbearable, and how people live in Canada and all that. And then suddenly I felt the need that I want, like, I started seeing glimpses of a past life, and I told her, I said, I'm seeing something. You please hold my space in case I get stuck. So um, I started going into close my eyes and got into the past life. I saw myself as someone who was skiing the Alps in Switzerland, and then I got buried under an avalanche. And it we were talking about this in Indian summer. It was June, which was like probably 48 degrees, and she had to help me with 2 3 blankets because I was shivering of cold. And she said, I wish I had a phone or something to had the presence of mind to click a picture, because you know how people who die in cold, they freeze, how their lips become blue and the face becomes a different color. So actually my face had changed colors, and she said your lips had become so blue and dark. I started getting scared that what if something happens to her. So sometimes even the physical pain or discomfort can be felt to that extent where the body reacts. So it is, it can be scary for someone who is watching, and also it is possible the person can't go through it. So we have to help. That's why we facilitate as therapists, and we don't suggest people do it going to a meditation and doing past lives. And I tell them, please do not do this unless you are a therapist yourself.
Now, you mentioned earlier that a message came to you while regressing somebody else,
Yeah.
right? How
Yeah.
does that happen?
Oh, this happens quite often actually. Uh, Probably because I wasn't listening to the message. So the universe had to send a mediator for me. But it happens a lot of times. A lot of times people who regress, they when they go through the life between life period after death and before they have to enter another life, or the time before this life, the soul plan at the time they're sitting with their guides to plan this lifetime. So there are times where the guides gives the message for so many other people. It can be me, and also it can be someone in their family, and they actually really know which message is for whom. So it's quite a common phenomena. It's nothing very rare or specific or something like that.
So, are you saying that pre birth, the guides gave her or him a message for you?
Not pre-birth, but she finished the past lives,
Uh,
and then because it was a very traumatic life. In fact, she was one client with a lot of somatic reactions in the past life. While she was in the session, the whole body was trembling for over 40 minutes. So I thought that their body needs to heal because of what happened to her. So usually what happens is, if the person has been through some trauma and the body has been badly damaged at the time of death or during the lifetime, we have to heal the body, because those trauma memories stay in the cellular memory of the person. So we want to make sure that those are also clear. So I asked her, I said, now, now after death, I want you to go to so and so place, and please do this, imagine, visualize, whatever. And I want you to connect to the guides to understand your message. Why did you choose such a painful life? And when she got her message, after that, she kept on telling a lot of things, like almost 17 pages, and repeatedly it was told, you have to write a book.
hmm.
And then eventually, then when I asked her, I said, are you going to write a book? Because I knew she won't be. She's not the kind. She said, no, 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 the messages are for you, actually. It's not for me.
Oh,
My message was in the beginning, and after that, it is for you. So it was when, sometimes they can meet their guides. And usually they get a lot of aha moments when they are in conversation with the guide.
okay, that makes sense. Can you share with us what generally most people go through during the death experience and then choosing the next life?
The process of death for every individual seems to be starting 6 months before the actual death happens.
Even if it's a trauma related?
No, no, if it is an accident, of course not.
Okay.
But in case the accident is also a part of the soul plan, usually the person has some kind of a knowing that something is going to come to an end abruptly. They keep talking about, similar incidents. That's what I have noticed with a lot of people. So, but usually when the death is like through either illness or a heart attack, or, going through while being asleep, like a normal death, like whatever. Not suicide also, of course. Suicide is also another story together. So usually the process of death happens about 6 months before, and a lot of people who are aware, people who are spiritually inclined, who have self-awareness, who have done good amount of work on themselves, they exactly know, okay, now the time is quite near, and they start preparing. And that is why a lot of people, when they grow old at certain time in life, they start moving towards the spirituality, and their desires really reduces. They really want to buy things. They really want to, be attached. They want to stay in the same place. And these are all signs that, okay, they're slowly getting ready. And they want to remain detached, because the more attached to your material and physical world, the more difficult the experience of death is going to be. So the universe is kind of preparing all of us as we age. So and then what happens is, about 3 to 4 minutes before death, or maybe 2 minutes or so before death, every soul starts reviewing the entire life. It just runs like a movie. And this is 100% of the cases, including all of my own past lives, that you start seeing the life and you realize, oh, where did I miss that turn? Where did I miss the lesson? How did I miss it? Where did I go wrong? So you have that awareness. And usually you also have a very quick, maybe a fraction of a second decision, how you want to deal with this. Because you know now you haven't learned the lesson and it's the time to go. So a lot of people actually go with regret. I would say it's more than 98% of people go with regret. And then what happens on the other side is again about majority of people, unless people who have had lives which we would call dark lives, where they have had extreme cases of cruelty and things they did, and they're extremely disappointed about what they have done. So most of them see themselves as a white light moving through a tunnel and then coming on the other side to a place which is very peaceful. And it is so interesting that it doesn't matter what kind of a soul it is, how much shame, guilt, or regret they have, how that death happens. Immediately after they are on the other side, their voice changes. They become so calm and they sense a deep sense of peace, which even I sense through their voice and the energy shift. And then some of them are received by the guides, some of them are scared of wanting to connect to the guides because they feel I haven't done my work, where there's so much of self judgment. And then usually on the metaphysical side, I mean, physical part of our life, whatever we have in the physical, in the solid physical form, we have it in the energy form. So then usually there are places to heal, physical hall of healing, spiritual hall of healing. So we call it those names, but they're the places they want to go. And usually you ask them, like a person with a difficult emotional life will herself say, even though they don't know, these are terminologies I as a therapist use, but the client doesn't know anything. They say that I need emotional healing or I want to meet my guide. So the other side is very similar, and but leaving from here, depending on the type of death, is a slight variation, but not much.
Who are the guides? Are they humans like us or completely different beings?
The guides also have their hierarchy and the level of seniority and from which dimension they are, what is their job, right? So most of them are seen like a kind of an energy form and not really like human beings, but the ones who seem to be the ascended masters who have just left the earth, maybe in the last 1,000 years or 2,000 years, they do have more of human form when described, but they don't have features, but maybe they look like an outline of a human body. But um, the guides who are from a different dimension and they have deeper messages, and usually the client address them as the oldest guide, or the one we don't seems to be an ancient kind of a guide. Usually they don't have a terminology at that point of time. They're kind of taken by surprise, so they don't really have a form. They just kind of a color, energy, or prana. They don't really have form.
Do you also see in the between lives when people make contracts about coming back?
Yeah, yeah. That happens at the time of soul plan. All contracts are made in life between life space. And I mean, I won't say they are made, because sometimes we make a promise to a person in physical reality. And unknowingly, we have already started, initiated a contract. But we choose which contracts to honor at the time of soul plan. So maybe, as a soul, I have encountered, let's say 5 million souls in all of my lifetimes. And then repeatedly, I recycle these souls, right? In every lifetime, I come to the few as a soul tribe. So it is at the time of soul plan as per what I want to learn and what they want to teach me, or what I want to teach them and what are they are supposed to learn, and how old the contract have been. And if the guides decide, okay, this is enough now, this contract now needs to be completely, the cycle should be completed, and so that it can be taken out of the space, and a new space for new beginning and new learning can happen. So those contracts are decided to be honored. Otherwise, we have millions and maybe probably, I don't know, maybe millions or billions of soul contracts, but we choose which ones to honor in which lifetime.
Now, you've had 877 lives so far that you can remember, and that is a lot. Do you
Yeah.
think you've had enough now and you don't need to come back anymore next time?
Every time I feel it has been enough, it just happens that the universe decides, no, it is not enough. She needs to learn more. So my recent one was while I was on a trip to Europe. This is after that Akanksha's interview, right? Till then, I was at 875 number. And then on the last leg of the trip, we decided to go to East Germany, a very touristy city called Erfurt. And we wanted to just see the place. And my friend loved this. He said, every time I go to this place, I get a lot of clarity. And, I was pumped because I also thought the purpose of my visit was to rest and also a lot of clarity will come intuitively. This was my knowing. So we entered the airport and we are still in the car. I haven't even stepped down and tears have started rolling. And suddenly I had so much of sadness, unbearable sadness, that I just couldn't help it. And I kept on apologizing. I said, I don't know what's happening to me. I can't breathe. And I genuinely couldn't breathe. So much so that my friends started getting worried that will I survive this or not. And then as the days went by, it just became worse. And suddenly I knew what has happened. So it seems that in World War I, I was a doctor, and and then I was attending to the people from the ward, and I had a boy, 6 years or 7 year old boy, and I lost him. And then I kept on roaming around the city looking for him and crying, and eventually I lost my mind and died as a mad woman. But that's what I was doing. I said I can't sit in one place, and I kept on roaming every place. And then she had a friend there. She said, "Let's go to her place. I have to drop something." And the building door opened, and I just felt suffocated. I just couldn't breathe further. I said, "I can't come in. I need to stand out so that I get fresh air." When I'm remembering now, even now, I'm getting the same breathlessness. So then I had to see what's happening. So, sometimes I feel it is enough, and the universe thinks, no, it's not. So I have no choice there. I don't have a say, really.
Now, growing up Muslim, you probably weren't taught about karma. But at this point in your life, do you believe in the theory of karma?
Yeah, of course, karma was very unknown, especially at the time I was growing up. Nowadays, I hear my cousins and other friends, they all refer to theory of karma, even though I don't know how much they really understand it because most people look at it as a theory for punishment or a
Yeah,
tool of punishment.
yeah.
But yes, now I do believe the law of cause and effect is one of the universal laws, and there can't be any other way. Unless we reach a level of awareness and knowing, and unless we reach a level of such spiritual enhancement, like let's say Buddha, um, that we eventually can bypass the law of karma. But at this moment, for people like us, it governs our life actually.
Do you recall past lives on other planets?
No, not other planets, but I do recall past lives in other dimensions.
Like what?
So let's say the same way we have the solar system and the planets, right? So we also have similar system with the universes. So every dimension of consciousness has its own um, duty. So basically, the whole of this universe and every being in this universe, human, non human, other dimension, alien, whatever, they're supposed to serve the universe. They're here to serve. And they have certain gifts and certain duty towards the collective. So there are dimensions of which are of, let's say, service and help. There are dimensions which are for destruction. There are dimensions which are for just to be an observer and just through experiencing by observing learn how to have uh, a truthful perception without the need to judge or conclude, just observe. So there are so many. So I do have I recollect around seven lifetimes, maybe more, but seven very clearly, where I come from another dimension. And mm, how that dimension was to help the collective was by serving, by let's say coming down to human consciousness to serve, by being just serving other places. So basically of help. So, and so are the ascended masters and angels. Those are also different dimensions of consciousness with their own way of, serving the collective. So those kind of.
Do you ever recall past lives in places like Atlantis or Lemuria?
Atlantis, I won't say it's a past life, but so I also do something called family constellation and soul macrocosm drama. So these are basically group therapies, and these are where actually everyone is going through the therapy with open eyes. And whoever's case it is, that person is watching others enacting his or her life. And then the perception changes because now you're seeing life from a perspective of the universe and how that truth is, not your perception of truth and reality. So in 2, 3 of such constellations, um, where I finished the cases in time and I thought, okay, let me also do one healing for myself. Let me do a therapy for me. So I would choose someone to come and act. So in those, I think 3 times it came up that there was a life in Atlantis. And also there was a life on another planetary system, but I don't recall the names. Actually, I make a physical note of everything, but I don't recall all the names. But Atlantis, this is how it came as a group, and everyone could confirm it. And then in consequence, 2 more such group therapies happened with totally different set of people who didn't know that we have had such an experience before. And then the story went on and on. And yeah, that.
What do you think is the biggest illusion in mankind?
To believe in a God that they have created rather than believing in a universe that has created them.
In your opinion, what is enlightenment?
So I feel enlightenment, like anything else, is a process, and it's a process of um, awakening to the light within in every moment of life. And that happens by having those aha moments and learning your lessons and realizing that this really is not the reality. This was just an illusion, right? So every time you recognize an illusion and you are your ability to let go of that, and then you go to another illusion. So you keep, that image of the when you stand in a room of mirrors and your images are continuously reflecting and projecting on all the mirrors. So you just have to turn around and see that actually those are all illusions and projections of your own mind, right? So enlightenment is that you can see through these mirrors and you can recognize none of them as you. But it's a process. It's not that one day it will happen, and then that would be, I think, what we as human beings call the enlightened person is when that person has reached that last mirror. Now we see them as enlightened. We don't realize it was a process, and it has been a process of many lifetimes for every soul to reach that level of, understanding their own selves and know that even what they know about themselves at the time of enlightenment can be illusion. So be completely detached of the perception at all times. So I think that's to me is enlightenment.
At this point in your life, do you try to discover new past lives with intent, or do they just come to you spontaneously?
No, sometimes I am very intentional. If let's say there's an issue or I recognize that there is a layer of me which I haven't uncovered, or there's a block, or there's a pattern, and I recognize that okay, I've worked on it for some time, and 50%, 70% it is resolved, but there are residues. Then I am very intentional about not only past life but any other therapy or healing I do. Like I also do a lot of channeling, journaling. So I'm quite intentional about what I want to know, right? And then, but sometimes it is also like the one it happened in airport. Sometimes it just comes because it is time for me to move from where I am having the block.
So you're saying that if you have a blockage in your life or there's something that you're not achieving in your life, you'll look for an answer in a past life.
Yeah, not all the time, but sometimes, yes, yes, I do.
How do you feel about the law of attraction and how that applies to past lives?
So I actually teach the law of attraction. I'm a master trainer of law of attraction, and I do believe that there is this law. And actually, whether it's a past life or whether this is just reality, whether it is just a belief form, it's not even a life. It is governed by the law of attraction too. Law of cause and effect, being a primary law, of course, has more force and pushes your incidents, your life events, your connections, who you meet, what happens. Obviously, those are mostly governed by the law of cause and effect. But the fact that you experience certain kind of experiences and you meet certain kind of people or you create certain life events, that is governed by the law of attraction. Let's say in the past life I believe that the authority, let's say I was a witch in a past life, which actually I was in one of my past lives, and then I was burnt alive. Very torturous thing. Like now this person, this soul has in that life has created a belief that authority is cruel, authority is merciless, authority does not listen to you. The power is always abused, right? Let's say I created all these belief systems. Now this is my belief system. So as per law of attraction, when it says likes attract like, now I will continuously create and experience likewise issues with authority. I would either find them unjust or I find them, cruel, or I will think that they're abusing power, and I actually start seeing it all around me. Whereas other people are going through their life and nothing is bothering them. But I keep having issues with authority for no reason. So this is where the law of attraction come in place, and then it's kind of a validation of what you believe, because your energy and the frequency of your energy is continuously attracting what it believes. And then because our ego needs to validate what it believes, then you want to also see it because it has to be validated, so that now you can safeguard yourself. So all of them work in a very nice mechanism, but sometimes against us.
Why do you think there's so much suffering in this world or this dimension?
So I think one, because the dimension is fear based. The you know, um, and the other thing is that it's our belief system, that it is the collective belief that through suffering you will grow. It's a very strong association of the collective, and it's either we say no gain without pain, or we say we must learn our lessons the hard way. Look at all the inputs that we have been getting for over generations, right? And it's a fear-based dimension because it is a dimension of the mind. So mind operates from fear because it is supposed to learn, and it needs to feel safe. Now for and it continuously needs to prove itself that I can overcome any challenge, hence I can keep you safe, right? So then we keep creating the suffering and challenges, and then we want to overcome them, and then we want to pat, like the ego, not we, but that's a part of it, pat our back and say, see, you did it. No matter what, you're strong enough. Sometimes there are cases, Jeff, you won't believe, that the person, the ego and the need for challenge is so huge that the person actually, when sits in front of me, from the energy I can read that their belief is that my problem is so big that not even God can help. Now that level of ego, of course, a therapist also cannot help unless I can make them go to that place first to identify that belief, and then now heal the belief, and then I will do anything else with that. So this is the basis of our need for suffering,
Hmm.
because it is also our need to prove to ourselves that we are worthy of the Creator's love. So I need to suffer. Like, look at it, like even in Christianity or any other religion, perhaps, how the crucifixion is kind of a glorious moment. However, it wasn't meant like that. The resurrection was supposed to be celebrated and understood. But we got stuck with the crucifixion and we hardly moved beyond it. Whereas the message of Jesus was totally different, right? But we got stuck where the pain was, not realizing it was like a phoenix rising from the ashes, that no matter what, you will come back again gloriously. We forgot that part. We are so stuck with the crucifixion because that's how the mind functions.
What do you think about AI and people potentially hooking their brains up to the internet?
For me, it is another way of distracting or distraction. So, you see how you can have control over something by either making them very needy, right? Or completely giving them a toy where they lose their mind over that and they're kind of addicted. So I think the introduction of AI is like introduction of pornography and women empowerment and the climate change. I'm not saying climate change is not real. It is real, but the course correction is not the way they're telling us to do it. It needs deeper study, you know. So I think AI is another level of kind of breaking the human consciousness and taking away the power of thinking, the analytical thinking, the power of questioning, the power to be creative. Now, all that I don't need to sit and think what to write. I just go chat GPT and I ask and I get it, and then I have 10 versions of what I want to convey, and I pick up whichever is nice. So where is the creativity going to go? So I feel this is another level of distraction, and also it is creating so much of separation. I don't need AI to do the creative stuff for me. I really need AI to, do my household so that I can tap into my creativity. I can tap into the genius within. So we are losing it, right? We are losing sense of memory. We are losing sense of self. We are just simply losing it. And the more we lose connection with ourselves, we are losing connection with each other. And that is how you break down a society, right? I am not saying it is not helpful. Of course, it has its own advantages. But to human consciousness, at a metaphysical level, there is no advantage. Physical reality, yes, it's making life easier for a lot of people. And it is great, I would say, technology. But we also need to understand what is that doing to us at the other level.
In your opinion, what is the ultimate purpose of life? Why do we keep coming back over and over again?
I think the ultimate purpose of life is to live it fully and joyfully, to rediscover and remember with who we truly are, but do it without judgment, without suffering. Do it with total joy and in awe of what we discover. Even if I discover, I have jealousy in me, I should be in awe of it and see how I can use that now for the benefit of others, not myself. So we are basically here to live life fully, joyfully, be of service and value, and keep rediscovering ourselves in a way that we can remember and reunite with that creator that is within us. It's not outside of us anywhere, but it's within us to recognize who we genuinely are, irrespective of what we have been told, and then actually celebrate it. That's the only purpose of life. And we keep coming back because we fail doing this much. We can't do it.
One of your books is called Because Time Does Not Heal. How did you come up with that title?
So, sorry. So my titles also happen during channeling. I don't really decide the title. In fact, I was writing a book about law of attraction, which now I am trying to complete. Um, I shouldn't be saying trying, I'm actually completing. Let me use the law of attraction correctly. Um, and and suddenly one day I was sitting, so I hit a writer's block and I couldn't write for about a month or so. And then when I forced myself to sit and write, I wrote a para. And the para started with that time cannot heal, and time cannot heal. Time itself is an illusion, and an illusion cannot heal another illusion. And then I knew this is the book. And then the title also came later. that because time does not heal. So basically, all the case studies I have done with my clients, just 10 of them, 10, 12 of them, real case studies and what insights came and how the process of past life went on. And that's it. Like,
I think it's a common saying, at least in the West, that time heals all or time heals everything. Why do we
yeah.
believe in that?
So time helps us actually forget. We are forgetful being. We don't even remember our own soul plan. And that's the whole game. To be able to, if you know end of the game, where do you want to play it, right? So you are not supposed to remember. And then you will enjoy because now it's adventurous. You want to challenge yourself and all that. So what time does is time itself is a construct, right? It doesn't really exist. So it's just a construct because we need to be able to sense the distance between two experiences. And then we have started using a construct called time. But it cannot heal. And simply the reason is that in the universe and at our level of subconscious mind, nothing can be deleted. So if a pain has occurred, it cannot be healed just because time has passed. But it can be forgotten because we get so distracted with so many other things and so many other new experiences. And we are so much, um, we are here to explore life, right? So we have so much more to do and we forget. But then someone or some situation will trigger it. And now a wound will open, which happened 10 years ago or 10 lifetimes before. So time just suppresses it and we forget about it. But when the actual time comes, then it gets triggered and then it resurfaces. That's why time doesn't heal. But simply because we don't remember at that, for a while, we feel it is out of our system, but it is really not because we can't delete anything from the universe. We can transmute it. So that is what therapy does. It transmutes a pain into a learning. It transmutes sadness into an understanding and detachment. So we can transmute it, but we can't delete anything from the universe.
You've lived over 870 lives, and perhaps other people have lived that many or even more. Do you think it's possible that we're degrading lifetime after lifetime because we're just accumulating trauma after trauma after trauma and perhaps other bad
The
things that
good
we've done over and over? And so potentially we could just be getting worse and worse.
So the good news is that very rarely any being will get worse, and if they get worse, then they get demoted. The universe is very, very precise that way. It doesn't leave anything to chance, right? Everything is beautifully, precisely designed, orchestrated. Even though we don't understand how the design works, but that's how it is. And the universe has no option for going back no matter how ugly life looks like or our reality looks like. And sometimes I feel sometimes you hear news and you wonder, can there be anything worse? Like can the human consciousness fall any further, right? Of killing, of war, of kids being used, all of that. But I keep reminding myself, and which is the truth, that the universe is always going forward. And even in this pain and suffering, there is growth. And even in this pain and suffering and witnessing what is happening in the world, there is a sense of awakening. We may not choose to awaken, but we have been presented with that choice. And then those who do not choose eventually would be eliminated. They would be taken off because they're not serving anymore, they're not growing, and the universe doesn't have place for that. And then they'll come back with upgraded versions of their soul plan, and also their suffering gets upgraded, unfortunately. But because there is a part which is continuously moving, and in fact, the entire universe, there's not really going back. But this is the time I would say, that we are in a universe of polarity. This is the time we are on the extreme dark of the polarity. And I'm sure the extreme light is yet, we are going to hit back. We are going to go back the swing. So yes, it's ugly. We feel, I feel we are, sometimes I also feel and question that what could be worse than this. And then I remind myself, just a little bit of patience, maybe few thousand years. I don't know how long would that take, but we definitely are going to swing back to the light. So I'm hopeful.
Some of the people that don't believe in reincarnation will say, how come the population keeps getting bigger and bigger? Like now we're up to 8 billion people on the planet. Do you
Actually, we
think?
are 8 billion in physical reality, right?
Mhm. So, do you think more and more people are coming in physical reality from other dimensions?
No, actually, from where are we coming? We are coming from energy, and energy is abundant. There's no end to it. There are millions of universes out there. So it doesn't matter whether we are in human form or any other form, but there are trillions of beings. And if some of them decide to come in human life, so be it, right? So the population really has nothing to do with from where we are coming. We are coming from an infinite source of energy, which is continuously breathing itself back into life. And human life is nothing. It is too small. We are not a dot in the universe. There's so much more, and there's so many millions and billions types of beings out there. And maybe some of them, in fact, if out of every 10,000, let's say, soul application, if I have to use, I don't have a better word, out of 10,000, one is allowed to come and experience human art. Now you can imagine the queue on the other side, and how many more can actually, how many more, if the gates open and there would be a flood of other beings coming to human art, we can be trillions of people. So it has nothing to do with, the soul, that it's not a matter of number, right? It's a matter of that's the spark and how much of itself it can keep recreating. And that's infinite, that we can't even kind of fathom how magnificent and huge that is, right?
Do you think that we see our past lives while dreaming?
Yeah, sometimes, yes. Yes, we do.
Hmm. Yeah.
In
Some.
fact, I very recently, um, I had to do a what we call proxy. So basically, when the client cannot be physically there because he's unwell in ICU or whatever, some situations, and gives permission to us to actually do a past life on their behalf. So, sometimes I did a past life on their behalf, or sometimes I have a student or a client or a friend who wants to experience and ready to volunteer. So we did a session for a person, and it was some painful truths, of even this life. So whenever we do a past life, sometimes we go through this life. We go to the inner child and womb, and then we go to the past, if necessary. So there was certain uncomfortable truth that I couldn't really share with the client, with the condition the client is in. I thought he won't be able to take it. So I thought I'll wait when he's ready. Of course, I have to share, but not now. And then he actually had a dream. He saw the entire thing and the past life and this life in the dream. And then he called, I mean, not him, but he had to tell someone, and they called me and they asked me, this is the dream he's had, and he's very scared. I said, don't worry, it's a release dream, which is not a lie. It was a release dream. But to that accuracy, that he could actually see everything.
I know working on yourself, there's a lot to do for anybody, but can you give my audience some practical exercises or things that they can do to improve their lives?
Yeah, of course. I think one of the best thing they can do is to spend time with nature. It sounds very cliche, but it does wonders not only to the mind, but also it calms the mind and also to the body. A lot of healing happens through nature because in nature it is the creator at work. So wherever you step in, you're actually in touch with that energy. So this is the easiest. And also meditate. Meditate. You don't have to sit and have a mudra and close your eyes. You can actually meditate by writing, by doing art, while cooking. What does meditation mean? Meditation means to be able to observe your breath. You can do it with eyes closed, you can do it with eyes open, you can do it while driving, all of that. So you can actually, it helps you calm down. And when the mind is calm, life is a lot better. Journaling is another thing I really suggest. For journaling, if you want it to be accurate and if you want it to be helping you with understanding yourself better, then you need to have a time and a place for it. Usually, you should set a practice, maybe 5 to 10 minutes you can start with, and then you need to be patient. In the initial pages or initial days, not much will come, and you would be like, what is this? It's such a useless practice. But the day you start journaling and writing without thinking, for more than 3 pages at a time, you realize how much of your inner world is opening. You can, release your pent up emotions. You can, if you have lost a loved one and you couldn't grieve properly, you can actually let go of the grief. You can actually complete the grief cycle. And you can do a lot with journaling, but the key is to have patience. And another thing I really, really suggest is that always create a community of 3, 4 people where you can just bear yourself soul naked, where you can go, you can be who you truly are with all the good, bad, and ugly. And this non judgment, vulnerable self of yours is the most powerful form of you. And if you can have a few people who can help you come out and actually show yourself, no matter what it is, and then be in acceptance of it. When we say in acceptance, that doesn't mean if I did something wrong and I'm confessing in my community and then I want to keep repeating it. In acceptance means I know this has happened, and now as an aware person, I make a different choice this time. And I wish to have the highest good of all. And the last but the most powerful, even more powerful than being in nature, is that always, 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 whenever you're thinking, speaking, or doing something, know why you are doing it and your intention. Your intention has to be that whatever I'm saying or doing, may it be for the highest good of all, even if you don't know what you're doing and how you're doing. But your intention will set the course and make sure the law of attraction will bring that which is for the highest good of all to you too. So I think these are the very basic but really powerful tools.
How do you define self love? What does that mean to you?
So self-love is actually uh, it's it's self-full, which means uh, you are ready to see all parts of you. You love yourself enough to be able to see, acknowledge, and embrace the darkest corners of your soul. And then take a decision not to operate from there any further. And once you give yourself the permission to see yourself in this, I would say, minute way, and be in allowance of what you see, and then make an aware choice to, I wouldn't say change it, but to be different in a way that you yourself would be more proud of yourself. You will allow others also to do the same. So now it is not you versus others, it is we together with life. Because I know you have dark, I know I have dark, I have accepted myself, I will hold the space for you to accept yours. And now that we are healed, let's do something nice together. So self love is always inclusive of others, it is not selfish or narcissistic. It knows that if I have these ugly sides, I'm sure the other person knows that. If I have come from such painful, traumatic childhood, then any other person would have. And I don't know what other person is going through. So you are willing to give that liberty and that chance to others because you also feel you deserve it. You want others to hold your space. So for me, self love is very different from, what we see on the social media these days. You must do this, do that, think about yourself. No, you can't be loving yourself if you can't love the collective. But that comes from a very deep knowing of the self, a very non judgmental acknowledgement of the self. Then only you can acknowledge others with that sincerity and authenticity, right? Self love is about being authentic, not about demands and desires and um, looking good and being high value man or woman. Now these terminologies are doing the rounds on social media. It has nothing to do with high or low value. Everyone is high value. But how authentic we are with ourselves, that needs a lot of courage.
Sahar, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Yeah, sure. So usually I am on social media, even though I'm not very fond of social media, but I do have a page and I do have an email. So maybe they can reach out to me like that. On Instagram, I am Clarity Coach Sahar, and on Facebook, I'm Sahar Gharachorlou, and um, I do have an email ID, which is connect@coachsahar.com. So that's how they can reach it.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
What I want to be talked about probably is that uh, other than being a life coach, major part of my work is a spiritual coaching. So probably that is what I want people to connect with me for spiritual coaching, not for just setting goals and achieving it, but to actually knowing their soul, right? So probably yes, the spiritual coaching would be something that I would want others to know about.
Before we finish up, can you leave
Yeah.
us with one last positive message?
What you can do for your life, and if you are parents, what best you can do for your own self and your life to start practicing living an intentional life, which means you get up in the morning, you ask yourself what I want for this day, how I want this day, how I want to feel today, and then know that these are the things you want. So we are not random people and we are not living random lives. This universe is not random. And when you become intentional, you align yourself with the precise design of the universe, and then things become very easy. So for me, I think the best thing you can do and teach children to live very intentional lives. That's what I can say.
Sahar, thank you for your message and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Jeff. It's an absolute pleasure to be on the show.
Thanks for watching the Jeff Mara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your